Good evening and a very warm welcome to the 17th edition of the T.N. Khoshoo Memorial Award and Lecture. I'm Mrinalini, Development Officer at A3 and your host this evening. This year's celebration might look different, but it still celebrates inspiring individuals making huge impacts in the fields of environment, conservation, and sustainable development. The theme for this year is the science and art of outreach for the environment and how it can be approached through multiple avenues. Our director will give us a peek into what is in store for us later tonight. The T.N. Khoshoo Memorial Award was instituted in the year 2004 to honor the legacy of Dr. Trilokinath Khoshoo, a world-renowned environmental scientist and trustee of A3. So far, the award has been given to 20 academics, practitioners, and organizations who have done pioneering work in the field of conservation and sustainable development. Before I invite Dr. Bauer to say a few words about Dr. T.N. Khoshoo, we would like to remind you that your microphones will be muted during the duration of the event. Please use the Q&A facility to ask questions to the panelists. Our moderator will pass the questions on to the speaker. If there are any connectivity issues or power outages during the event, we apologize and please be patient with us. We will resume the session as fast as possible. We also request the panelists to put their phones on silent when they are speaking on screen. Dr. Bauer, our founder president, has joined us all the way from Boston, USA today. Dr. Kamal Bauer is a distinguished professor of biology at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. Among the many awards Dr. Bauer has received, to name a few are the first International Guneris Award in Sustainability Science, the International Midori Prize in Biodiversity, and the Linnean Medal for the Linnean Society. He is an elected fellow of the Royal Society, the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and the American Philosophical Society. Dr. Bauer, I invite you to say a few words about Dr. T.N. Khoshoo and A3.
Thank you, Mrinalini, and a very good evening to the Khoshoo awardees, our distinguished panel members, members of the Khoshoo family, the trustees, staff, and friends of A3 who have joined us today during these very difficult times. The pandemic has clearly demonstrated how fragile is our relationship with the natural world. So we pause today for a small celebration during these very tough times to recognize the contributions of several people to the betterment of the environment. One such person was T.N. Khoshoo, a founding trustee of A3, a very prominent academic in the 1980s and 1980s, very well known for his work on biodiversity and sustainability. He had a distinguished career and he retired as a secretary to the Government of India in the Ministry of Environment and Forests and was a really pioneer. He was the one who started the Clean Ganges project and many other national initiatives. Among the many awards Dr. Khoshoo received was Padma Vibhushan from the Government of India and the United Nations Sasakawa Award. When Dr. Khoshoo passed away 18 years ago, friends and family of Dr. T.N. Khoshoo established an endowment at A3 to honor every year certain individuals for their work on the environment. A person who was always most enthusiastic about this relationship between A3 and the Khoshoo endowment and actually sustained this relationship for almost 17 years was Mrs. Mohini Khoshoo, wife of Dr. T.N. Khoshoo, who sadly passed away last June. Dr. Khoshoo would always say what he achieved could not have been possible without the tremendous grit and support of Mrs. Khoshoo. She will be missed. I first came in touch with Dr. Khoshoo when I was a graduate student at Punjab University. What impressed me most was his skills in communication that made him one of the most popular teachers at the university. Communication, we know, is critical for success in outreach programs. Thus, Dr. Khoshoo would have been most impressed by today's theme of science and art of outreach for the environment, as well as with the Khoshoo awardees and the panelists. I should also mention, today we celebrate not only the Khoshoo awardees and our panelists, but also two of our graduate students. And I'm delighted to be here, delighted to join you in this occasion, and welcome again, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bawa. That was wonderful. We will request Dr. Pandit to come on screen and give us a deeper look at this year's theme. Dr. Nitin Pandit has been the director of ATRI for nearly 2 years and is guiding ATRI towards a new era as a global pioneer in conservation and sustainability. As we welcome Dr. Pandit, he would like to begin his talk with a song that is very relevant today, especially in the time of a pandemic. The lyrics and song were composed by Arjun Sundar and Amit Pandita. Mr. Pandit will speak to us more on this after this song.
ஆமா இது ரொம்ப கஷ்டமான நேரம்தான் ஆமா நமக்கு ரொம்ப நஷ்டம் கொடுக்கும் நேரம்தான் தாத்தன் பாட்டம் பார்த்த கொள்ள நோவு உண்டுங்க நாம பார்த்தது இந்த கோவிட்-19ங்க வீட்டு தாய்மார நீ கேட்டு பார்க்கணும் அவங்க சொல்ல தட்டாம கேட்கணும் நோய் வந்த போது நம்ம தாய்மார்கள் சொன்னாங்க என்றும் நம் கூட துணையாக நின்னாங்க உனக்கு நினைவில்லையா இதை நாம் செஞ்சிருக்கோம் உனக்கு நினைவில்லையா கதைகள் கேட்டிருக்கோம் மறுபடி அந்த கதை கேட்க நேரம் வந்தாச்சு உள்நாட்டு பண்பாட்ட பாட நேரம் வந்தாச்சு தானா நானா தானா நானா தானா நானா தா.
Good morning from near Washington, D.C. in the US here. Good evening to everyone in India and elsewhere. In the COVID summer this year, the ATRI faculty came together to write an essay about each one of their own experiences in this difficult time. They wrote about how COVID had impacted their work and how their knowledge about ecosystems, biodiversity, and the environment impacted their own worldview of the pandemic and our response to the pandemic. While Dr. Abhi Vanak led some of the most advanced thinking about the importance of intact and diverse ecosystems, Dr. Ganesan from our faculty wrote passionately about how our traditional and indigenous wisdom provided lessons that are relevant even today. As a plant economist par excellence, Dr. Ganesan reflected on the common practices used by communities in India. The terms that we now use, such as quarantining, social distancing, were commonly practiced with a strong and effective communication system, a community-based communication system, which had other social artifacts, such as neem leaves and turmeric powder, and a lean, diverse diet to go along with that. That was commonly practiced in those communities. Neighbors and communities recognized that germs are actually a part of the environment, with the tacit knowledge that in fact, they regulate our immunity levels with a linear relationship to germ diversity. Inspired by this very touching essay, Arjun Sundar and Amit Pandita wrote a lovely poem in Tamil and set a lovely tune to it, which you just heard. One wonders, what is the role of poetry and song in sharing such knowledge? It's tempting to note that in a society that relied on word of mouth storytelling, song and dance, myth, and other historical artifacts, such community-based communications form the essence of outreach in traditional scientific knowledge. Of course, in the last few decades, along comes a transistor and a semiconductor to make a new knowledge-based world, providing different modes of outreach that allow us to reach a much larger cross-section of society. It then becomes important for us scientists and science writ large to learn the new ways to ensure that while fascinating new knowledge remains to be discovered, we don't lose sight of what we have learned about society and its role in nature. With this new technology, now we have the ability to reach masses. It means that scaling of our scientific knowledge has become all the more important. That means these outreach methods, communication methods, have to be taken up so that we can look at mass communications and mass movements that can result embodying the knowledge that science provides us. Typically, hidden in our papers and manuscripts, most of us scientists are frankly not terribly good at it yet. Some of us are getting very, very good at it. But there's a long ways to go. Normally, we would transfer this knowledge through papers and conferences and meetings in person. In fact, even this event last year was in person at the Bangalore International Center, a wonderful venue in downtown Bangalore. And last year, our theme was communications. Jonathan Bailey from the National Geographic Society spoke about communications. And the award went to Meena Subramaniam, a wonderful artist with vivid paintings of the Western Ghats. This year, we can't do that in person. So no Bangalore International Center this year. Hopefully, maybe next year. So we've been a little opportunistic about this and said, what are the other ways in which outreach can help us in conveying the word of science? What we've gathered here together are people from across the spectrum who are leading the way in taking the word of the science of the environment to the public at large. With that in mind, we have things to learn from a young activist, things to learn from people who are leading movements through well-known personalities, through avant-garde Renaissance art, through setting up institutions that can help us in taking the word out to the masses. And finally, and most importantly, through the performing arts. These are things that we as scientists need to look at, need to pay attention to, because that's what will help us in getting the word out to the world at large. With that in mind, maybe I can just ask the organizers to just play that little last bit of song. I'd like to hear that again. Welcome again, and thank you for joining us.
வாசலில் வைத்த பாத்திரம் நினைவில் உண்டு கிருமிகள் போக்க கைகளை கழுவியது வீட்டை விட்டு தான் வெளியே தான் செல்லாமல் சென்றாலும் பிறரோடு ஒன்றாக கூடாமல் தாய்மார் ஞானத்தில் நன்மை உள்ளது தாய்மார் ஞானத்தில் நன்மை உள்ளது இன்றும் என்றும் சொல்லில் உண்மை கொண்டது இன்றும் ஒன்றும் சொல்லில் உண்மை கொண்டது ஹே தானா நானா தானானானா தானானானா தானானானா. இதை நாம் மறவாமல் நினைவில் வைத்து கொண்டு என்றும் பிரியாமல் பிரிந்தே இருந்து கொண்டு நோவை எதிர்த்து நிற்க நேரம் இப்போ வந்தாச்சு. உள்நாட்டு பண்பாட்டு இதுக்காக உண்டாச்சு. தானானானா ஹே தானானானா தானானானா ஹே தானானானா.
Thank you, Nitin. This year's awardee has achieved monumental impact while campaigning for climate change at a very young age of 9. Lysipriya Kangujam is one of the youngest climate and environmental activists in the world. She has been campaigning for climate action in India for the past 3 years to pass new laws to curb India's high pollution levels and to make climate change literacy mandatory in schools. Lysipriya has received the Global Child Prodigy Award 2020 in January in New Delhi by Lieutenant Governor of Pondicherry, Ms. Kiran Bedi. At this very young age, Lysipriya, with the help of her father, has managed to use social media as a tool for outreach. This is something we can all learn from her. She is a climate activist and the founder of the Child Movement, a body that aims to raise awareness to protect the planet by tackling climate change and natural disasters. Congratulations, Lysipriya. I would like to invite Ms. Rohini Nilakani, our trustee, to present Lysipriya with the award. Ms. Nilakani is the founder chairperson of Arghyam Foundation and Rohini Nilakani Philanthropies. Welcome, Rohini. Welcome, Lysipriya.
Hello, Lysipriya.
I'm fine, thank you, ma'am.
Round of applause. Award. Congratulations, Lysipriya.
Thank you, ma'am.
We would like to invite Lysipriya to speak about her experiences and the importance of scientists translating their work to make it more universally accessible. Lysipriya, go ahead.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lysipriya Kungujam. I'm 9 years old. I'm an Indian climate activist and the founder of the Child Movement. I'm fighting to save our planet and our future. I don't know how to express my feelings now. I'm really very happy today, and also I'm really very emotional today. Thank you so much, Ashoka Trust for Research on Ecology and Environment. At Tree for giving me this prestigious TN Khoshoo Memorial Award me this year. Thanks for putting my name among the list of great scientists and eminent people of the country working for our environment. I'm truly humble and it's my honor to accept this award. I really appreciate all the juries and staffs of Earthree for this great honor. Today, I would like to share a short story about how I started my journey to become what I am today. I never thought to become a climate activist, and also I never knew what I'm doing in activism. I was born in a small village of Manipur in northeast India. My birthplace is surrounded by lush green mountains and alluring atmosphere. In 2016, I came to Delhi for the first time, but my life became very messy due to the high air pollution. Later, I moved to Bhubaneswar, Odisha for my schooling. And again, my home, Odisha, was hit by Cyclone Titli in 2018 and Cyclone Fani in 2019. All such incidents in my young life turns me into a child climate activist. When I was just around 4 years old, I accompanied my dad for raising funds for the victims of the deadly massive Nepal earthquake of 2015, where more than 10,000 people died and lakhs of people got injured. We went to Nepal all the way from India by the road to drop the foodstuffs, medicines, clothes, etc. for the victim children and families. I get scared when on television I see people suffering and dying due to lack of awareness. I cry when I see children losing their parents or people becoming homeless due to danger of disasters. My country has many disasters like earthquake, flood, landslide, etc. That was the first time where I heard the words climate change and natural disasters. But I couldn't realize what exactly it is as I was a small baby that time. Now I realize that this could be the main reason why I'm concerned about the planet and our future. In July 2018, when I was just 6 years old, I got a chance to attend one United Nations disaster conference in Mongolia. It was my life-changing event. After return back from Mongolia in July 2018, I have started my organization called the Child Movement to call the world leaders to take immediate climate action to save our planet and our future. Child movement is a movement for children, like you can say it's a people movement for climate justice. We give lots of awareness to the people and the children that trees are very important for our life. They help us to control the carbon emission and greenhouse gases. Without trees, we can't live in this world. And also, we tell them that what is climate change, what we should do to fight the climate crisis, etc. I launched a new initiative called Monday for Mother Nature, where I plant thousands of trees every week with the school children with a mission to plant 1 million trees every year. So far, we have planted over 3 lakh trees across the country. People always tell me that you are too young to get involved in such activism. But I prove them that age doesn't matter to make a difference. I'm big or small, it doesn't matter. I'm a good child. I'm strong, smart, intelligent, and brave. Many children and youth inspire from me. Coronavirus pandemic is a testing time for our leaders and for our humanity. We are facing a pandemic on one side and flood, drought, heat wave, cyclone, typhoon, air pollution, etc. on other side. This is the time to wake up. This is the time to open up your eyes. This is the time to send your children and grandchildren to fight for the survival and for their own future. You can just see in Delhi how air pollution is so dangerous. Even children can't move out of their home. I'm worried about the health of the school children and small babies. Government announced that they will ban the firecrackers for 2-3 weeks. Will install smoke tower into three places, but this is not a permanent solution. Our leaders are just busy in blaming each other instead of finding a long-term solution. They are just they're just taking the speech. They're not doing any action. I want our world leaders to do more action. Otherwise, our future and our planet would be dying soon. They must act now to save our planet and our future. You can just see in Arctic and in Himalayas how icebergs are melting twice as fast than ever before, and how sea level are increasing, and our Earth is becoming very hot. I'm worried about the future of our planet, and many biodiversity hotspots become climate hotspots now. I think you all heard in the news about Australia bushfire, California wildfire, Amazon rainforest fire, and Siberia forest fire. Billions of animals has died, millions of trees has gone. I'm really very sad. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't even take my food. Many children lost their homes, but this is the real effect of climate change. Our leaders don't have time to listen to us. Why they don't hear all our voice? But this is a real climate emergency. They must act now to save our planet and our future. Today, I have a small message to all the children of the world. Children must tell their parents that they should walk or they can use the bicycle if it's nearby. Don't use car or bikes every time. Stop use single-use plastic at our home, and don't throw garbage or plastic on street, ocean, rivers, seas, or any other anywhere else. Please don't cut trees. If you cut one tree, then plant minimum 10 trees. I'm doing lots of campaign to include climate change as a compulsory subject in our school curriculum in India. So far, Rajasthan, Gujarat, and Sikkim has given positive response to include climate change as a compulsory subject in our school curriculum. From 0 to over 1.5 lakh schools will teach climate education in schools in India. And also, more than 1,000 private schools have already started teaching climate education in India and various parts of the world. After my request, today I would like to tell something to our leaders. You don't know how to fix the ice melting in the Arctic, Antarctica, and Himalayas. You don't know how to fix the sea level rising and submerging our beautiful islands. You don't know how to fix the locusts destroying our crops. You don't know how to fix the air pollution affecting our health and killing 6 million children every year. You don't know how to fix the heat waves killing poor people every year. You don't know how to fix the hole in our ozone. You don't know how to fix the wildfires killing millions of animals and destroying millions of trees every year. You don't know how to fix the COVID-19 virus killing the humanity every day. You don't know how to fix the cyclone and typhoon devastating millions of homes every year. You don't know how to fix the habitats of countless and voiceless animals now used for mining. You don't know how to fix the river and lakes now dry and dead. You don't know how to fix the forest now transformed into desert. If you don't know how to fix it, please stop breaking it. The best, I'm not telling here the list of problems happening around the world, but these are all the real facts where we can't deny it. The best gift parents can give to their children is not beautiful house, expensive cars, lots of money. The best gift you can give to your children is a beautiful planet. To give this planet, you have to change yourself. If you can change yourself, then you can change your family. If you can change your family, then you can change your neighborhood. If you can change your neighborhood, then you can change your community. If you can change your community, then you can change the state. If you can change the state, then you can change your country. If you can change your country, then you can change the whole world. Change means empowerment. Empowerment means independent. Independent means freedom. Freedom is when you can protect your land and environment. Freedom is when you can protect your children's future, culture, and health. Freedom is when no one can discriminate you on the basis of caste, creed, color, sex, or any other differences. Freedom is when you can read and write. Freedom is when you're out of hunger. Freedom is when we are all together in this fight. Fight for your freedom. Lastly, I'm also paying my tribute to the world-renowned environmental scientist and the first secretary of the Department of Environment, Government of India, Dr. T.N. Khoshoo and family for donating this award. And I would like to dedicate this award to all the climate activists of the world. This is the award won by you all, not just by me. And also, I will use this cash prize to provide education to the armed conflicts victim children of the world. Long live Ashoka Trust for research on ecology and environment. Long live India. Thank you. Jai Hind. Sonali Manipur. Jai. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Lysipriya. Wow,
Welcome.
that was wonderful to listen to your passion and from where you're coming from. We sure hope more young individuals take inspiration from this passion that you have, and become champions of, excuse me, climate change and outreach.
Mhm.
Congratulations once again.
Thank you, ma'am.
ATRI is a recognized research center of the Manipal Academy of Higher Education, and we run our own interdisciplinary doctoral program. Our PhD scholars conduct their research at field sites across the country. This year, we are proud to announce 2 scholars who have been awarded their doctoral degrees in the middle of a pandemic. We will now invite Dr. Balram, our trustee, for the doctoral degree presentation ceremony. Dr. Balram is the former director of the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, and he is the recipient of the 3rd highest Indian civilian honor of Padma Bhushan. Welcome, Dr. Balram, and congratulations to our 2020 ATRI graduates. I would like to invite Ovi to come on screen to accept her award for her doctoral thesis titled The Political Ecology of Pastoral Development and Landscape Conservation in Bunny Grasslands of Gujarat. Congratulations, Dr. Ovi Thorat.
Thank you.
I would like to invite Ronita to come on screen to accept her award for her doctoral thesis titled Consequences of Urban Demand on Pollination Service and Livelihoods of the Reliant Community, a study in the peri-urban landscapes of Bangalore, India. Congratulations, Dr. Ronita Mukherjee.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Balram. We now move on to the segment on conversations around science outreach. What better way to understand the different methods of outreach than to hear from experts from their own fields? Um, we would have really liked to have heard from Mr. Wajid Khan. Unfortunately, he couldn't be with us today as he was called out urgently to Africa for a relief event. We will invite the second panelist of the night. Transforming brand ambassadors to actively participate in a cause or a drive or be wholeheartedly involved in outreach takes outreach to a whole other level. There is no better example in India than the efforts by Mr. Satyajit Bhatkal. Mr. Satyajit Bhatkal is the CEO of Pani Foundation, which works with the mission of making rural Maharashtra drought-free and prosperous through a people's movement. Between 2016 and 19, with the participation of thousands of villages, this movement led to the creation of 550 billion liters of water shortage capacity in Maharashtra. This brought to light several social issues in India. That's the lesson we take away from here today. And ATRI will be dwelling on this lesson in subsequent interactions with the foundation. Prior to setting up Pani Foundation, Mr. Bhatkal created and directed Satyameva Jayate, India's leading TV show that focused on addressing social issues. It sparked crucial conversations and broke several taboos. Welcome, Mr. Bhatkal. We are honored to have you share your experiences and learnings with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you to ATRI and thank you to the Khoshoo family for giving me this opportunity to speak here today. The journey of using communication for social issues for us really started. When I say us, I'm referring to the entire team at Pani. I'm speaking here on behalf of Amir, Kiran, and so many others, hundreds of people in different parts of Maharashtra who participate in Pani Foundation. So our journey began with a show called Satyameva Jayate. And Satyameva Jayate was a show which had as its mission, had as its intention, we wanted to discover what the potential of mass communication for social change was. Because in the good old Doordarshan days, television was used for messaging, social messaging. But ever since commercial television took over, that had come to a stop. So we were, in that sense, we were experimenting. We were trying to find out whether with this show, we could actually A, get an audience, and B, whether that audience would actually act on what was being stated in the show. And we were delighted on both counts. The show was not only very, very widely viewed, But far more important, the show led to action on the ground on various issues. So whether it was on female feticide, whether it was on alcoholism, whether it was on drought and water, we saw that all sections of society responded very positively. So whether it was government, whether it was the bureaucracy, whether it was the political class, whether it was civil society, we discovered that people were willing to put their time, money, and energy into contributing towards social change. And this we documented for all the episodes of Satyameva Jayate. But we also discovered that the show as a format had certain limitations. By its very nature, every episode in some sense is an enemy of the previous one. So you do an episode on female feticide and a lot of people are talking about it. And the next week you do something on child sexual abuse. And both are important issues. But somehow the attention is shifting from one to the other to the other. So we took a conscious decision, in fact, at the end of season 1 itself, that we will shut down the show. And we would work on only one social issue, but as communicators, because we still wanted to see if by carrying out a focused communication campaign, could we push the envelope further? Could we use communication to genuinely create a people's movement for change? And the issue we selected was water and drought. And the geography we decided to work in was the state of Maharashtra. Now, if you look at the issue of drought in Maharashtra, Maharashtra has been drought prone now for quite some time now. And every year the intensity of drought has increased. Now, this is an irony because the technology and the knowledge to solve for drought has always existed. And that is known as decentralized watershed management. So going back to Vilasrao Salunke in the 70s, Anna Sahib Hazare in the 80s, Popatrao Pawar in the 90s, we find these islands of excellence. A village, a cluster of villages, which practices watershed management and solves its problem. And yet, the village next to Hivre Bazar is tanker fed. The village next to Radheganj Siddhi is tanker fed. Somehow, when it comes to social causes, a proven technology was not acquiring scale. And this we found in Satyameva Jayate, by the way, for issue after issue after issue. In fact, a slightly provocative statement on this is that there is no problem in India that has not been solved. Because everywhere you'll find some good person's group of people, a village, a panchayat, a municipal body, which has solved a problem. But unfortunately, that solution doesn't acquire scale. So we felt maybe communication is a missing part of the puzzle, and communication can help to acquire scale. And that is why we decided to work on the issue of drought and to take the science of decentralized watershed management to the people. What is the vehicle we used? We created a competition because we said we cannot be working in the old paradigm of doing prabodhan, of preaching. It has to be a people's movement. It has to be demand driven. It cannot be supply driven. So Pani Foundation, which we set up, does not give any money to any village. What it does is that it holds a competition, it awards prizes and creates a mahal, which is almost like a festive spirit, so that maximum number of villages participate and they have the joy of participation. So solving the problem of drought, practicing decentralized watershed management is not the problem of government, is not the problem of a corporate funder, is certainly not the problem of Pani Foundation. It is both the right and the privilege of the village to do so. So we created this competition called the Satyameva Jayate Water Cup, which we held over 4 years, 2016 to 2019. And over 6,500 villages participated. Shramadhan was a very important part of the competition because we realized that collective action is the heart of solving the problem. Because if the problem, even at the village level, is that of just a few people, it will never work. We need to get the entire village, especially women, involved. So the competition rules specify that a village cannot participate without participating in training. And training was very important because knowledge and science is at the heart of what we were trying to attempt. We believed that if that knowledge, if that science is taken to the people, that is a lasting social capital which people will always have, will always enjoy. It is something no one can ever take away from them. So the training was a 4-day residential training with follow-up trainings again at the village. At least half the trainees had to be women. And on that basis, we realized that if there is motivation, if there is a competition, if there is honor in participating, people are willing to put their time, money, and energy for this cause. And over 4 years, literally 6,500 villages participated. Over 550 billion liters of water storage capacity got created, and over 1,200 villages are reliably drought free. And this has been done entirely through their knowledge, their effort, their wisdom, and their sweat and toil. Now, in part 2 of what we are working on is we are trying to work towards demand management of water, because what we could do on the supply side, we believe we have already achieved. So we've actually wound up the water cup, and we are now working on what we call the Samruddha Gav Spardha, which is a competition only for villages which have done good work here in order to achieve ecological sustainability and economic prosperity. So this broadly is what we have tried to do, staying communicators using various tools of communication. So we are very, very active on social media. We make over 200 films a year. We've created online training suites of every aspect of watershed management. And we've realized that when communication meets with on-ground activity, there is a great deal that can be achieved. And this is a sweet spot which is available for all of us who are trying to work on various social causes. So I think I've completed my 10 minutes. So I'd like to take a pause here.
Thank you, Mr. Bhatkal. It's very interesting to hear about how communication and on-ground activity, as you mentioned, a sweet spot, and how everything comes together when you know exactly where to hit it at. We would like to actually put a question to you, and we'd like to understand the delicate balance when you're dealing with a brand. Question is, brands can be helpful but also risky. How would you characterize the interaction between the foundation and Amir Khan, which helps to ensure that science and cause is not compromised?
Thanks so much for asking that question. And so Amir was actually offered the brand ambassadorship of the government's program, which is known as Jaliyukt Shivar Abhiyan, for this for water conservation. And what Amir told the then chief minister is that I want to be much more than that. And the role, therefore, he plays at Pani Foundation is not really that of a brand ambassador, because often what happens with brand ambassadorships is that what gets advertised is the brand, not the cause. So the role that Amir plays at Pani Foundation is that he is, of course, he brings credibility, he brings a lot of outreach, a lot of people, and our funders, for example, we would not have managed to be able to reach so many so soon without the credibility that Amir brings to the table. But that is a very small part of Amir's contribution. I think the really major part of Amir's contribution is that he's been a foot soldier for this. What very few people know is that every single year for 2.5 months, he does not shoot for any films. He doesn't do any professional work. And Kiran and he, both of them, trudge through the villages of Maharashtra, hundreds and hundreds of villages, while the water cup is on, encouraging them and participating in Shramadhan. So I dare say there are very few people who would have seen the remotest villages of rural Maharashtra to the extent that Kiran and Amir have. And I think that that's the role that they've really played. And this is what goes out very loudly to all of us in the team, is that they are foot soldiers for this. So they are not something which is removed from the movement. They are not a message which is external to the movement. They are a leading part of the movement.
Right. That's wonderful. Let me just ask our team, do we have time for another question? I think so, we do. Okay, so maybe one more question, if that's all right. Many science-based research organizations consider engaging with, as you said, a brand ambassador for outreach. what is your advice to them?
I think a brand ambassador can certainly help, but a brand ambassador is like an ingredient. It's like when you're cooking, one ingredient does not make a dish, so you
That's
need
true.
a number of ingredients. And
Sure.
effective communication is a design, is not a piece of communication. It's a science. I mean, I dare say it's a science, and it's something which we take extremely seriously. There's a lot
Right.
of designing that needs to be done because communication has to be mutually complementary. Communication has to draw from many things, from what you're doing, whom you want to reach, how you want to reach, what are the various things which must come together. If that is thought through and the brand ambassador fits well within that overall plan, then it will work. Otherwise, I dare say that a brand ambassador by herself or himself may not be able to make the cut.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today. It was wonderful hearing about the importance of social movements, importance of communication. We're so glad you could be part of this event. Thank you, Mr. Patkar.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So, moving to our third panelist for this evening, certain institutions have a huge responsibility in reaching out to the masses and making science available universally to society. Such an institution has been created right here in Bengaluru to bring together science and art in different ways. The Science Gallery Bengaluru was designed and founded by Dr. Jahnavi Falke to serve this purpose. Dr. Falke was appointed founding director of the Science Gallery Bengaluru in November 2018. Previously, Dr. Falke held a tenured faculty position at King's College London. She was also an external curator to the Science Museum London and has been a scholar in residence at the Deutsche Museum Munich. Dr. Falke is the author of Atomic State, The Big Science in 20th Century India, and has co-edited Science of Giants, China and India in the 20th Century. She's the producer and director of the documentary film Cyclotron. We are privileged to have you with us here today, Dr. Falke. Please welcome, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on outreach.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mrinalini, for that warm welcome. And in the first instance, congratulations, Lisipriya. It's wonderful to be in the company of a young person, and it's never too late to learn from anyone. So it's great to hear your words, well beyond your age. Thank you also to Nitin and the A3 team for inviting me to speak about our effort in Bangalore. And some of you have heard about what we do earlier, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to take it to a wider audience and participate, of course, in the Khoshoo award events. So thanks again. It was wonderful to hear Satyajit Bhatkal's project and the methods with which they work. And I think the message I take away is that it takes a village. It takes a village to, no pun intended, it takes a village to grow any effort. And in a sense, you need a lot of ingredients for any effort to be successful. And I think if you ask me in a sentence, it's been on November 22nd, exactly 3 years since I moved to Bangalore to set up this project. So it's something I remind myself of. So in a sentence, if I were to today share with you what it is that Science Gallery Bengaluru is expected to do, then I would say our primary job is to move the needle on taking what is today primarily a strong professional conversation on science in India to become a cultural one. So help find a place for science, a place and space for science, not only in India's professional life, but also in its cultural life. So I think that's our primary task. Please allow me to share my screen with you and just let me know if you are able to see my presentation, because that's going to help me take it forward. Mrinalini, is it visible now? Yeah, excellent. So for those of you who are not familiar with the gallery, we are a part of an international network of university-based galleries. So we are 8 of us across the world right now. So Dublin is where it all started about 10 years ago. And now we have galleries in London, Rotterdam, Venice, Bangalore, of course, you can see on the map, Melbourne, Atlanta, and Detroit. And of course, you can check further details on our website if you want. Now, what's different to the gallery in Bangalore is that we are not located on a university campus, unlike our sibling galleries, but we are instead the only autonomous institution, autonomous gallery in the network of 8. And also privileged to have as our founding partner the government of Karnataka, who have not only given us the land, but our sort of founding capital. Our building is under construction, and instead of one university within which our sibling galleries are deeply embedded and work, very closely with their pedagogy, with their research and outreach, we have 3 academic partners with whom we work very closely, and I'm very happy to say the relationships with our partners has gotten only stronger. So the Indian Institute of Science is our lead academic partner, and the National Center for Biological Sciences and Shrishti Institute of Art, Design and Technology are our collaborating partners. So, in order for a cultural conversation around science to emerge, what needs to happen is that, or the Dublin model that has been primarily in existence for about 12 years now, saw the need to bring art and science together. And I think when I started out in Bangalore, I took advantage of the fact that we were an independent gallery as opposed to being with a university. And so it was a moment to ask the question, what has worked for the network model in the last 10 years? What has not worked for it? And therefore, how can we do things differently that not only speak to the Indian context, but also to look for a model that actually others might seek to adopt in the coming years? And, why not have a model which actually could inspire our European and American locations? And I have to say we've come some distance in that effort. And I'm actually quite proud of my team to have supported this kind of thinking and this kind of sustained effort. So what we are working with now is that we've decided that we are not only looking at science and art, but we're actually looking at what the Germans would call Wissenschaft, so the human and natural sciences both, as opposed to natural sciences alone, and a broader understanding of culture rather than looking at art and artistic practice alone. So science and culture are sort of, the stable sort of ideas that we work with. That's not to say science is not a part of culture, but the point is that how do you make that apparent? How do you make that visible? And therefore, this is an experiment. And the word experiment, I always like to call it my 007 word, because we always write it in italics. So that's the word that gives dynamism to this experiment, because it's an experiment institutionally, because nothing in the network actually resembles an institution of this kind, but also, just an experiment, right? Like a scientific experiment or a field experiment. So we are playing with these 3 words, and the kind of energy and the dynamism that the coming together of these 3 should create for both public debate in science, but the ability in the public to also do science. So these are sort of, some of the ideas we work with. So as I already mentioned, bringing science back into culture or creating a strong cultural conversation around science. And our sort of the units that we work with are young adults. So they are our target audience. We are especially concerned with people between the ages of 15 to 28. That doesn't, of course, mean that others are not allowed, but the bulk of our effort is targeted at ensuring that young adults work with us strongly. We nurture them, we mentor them, we train them. Through the kind of institution, through the kind of experimental institution that Science Gallery is becoming, we want to help universities reimagine research. And I'll come to that in a second again. And the third, through all of this, shape the larger culture, right? Like what can a good, vibrant debate, public debate on science look like? And why do we need this? We need this because we need to establish the value of research-based claims in public life and policymaking. So we cannot, in a way, we cannot sustain a public understanding or a public culture around science which does not support the value of research-based claims in public life. So how do we do it? We do it through, so unlike Satyajit's example, which of course is about projects conducted already, we are sort of, taking our first steps in this direction. And so it's about a lot of dreams and some of which, is beginning to realize now. So our building complex is divided equally or nearly equally into three parts. And so the first part is public engagement, which also includes a set of community initiatives. And this part of our building complex, or these part of our activities, correspond directly with our sibling galleries elsewhere, right? So that's what is done within the Science Gallery network. But the other two are in a way unique to us. What is especially unique to us is the public laboratory complex. And some of you have heard me speak about this before, but I must say that it is important to share this again and again, because it makes the point, I think, rather well. So many of us are not aware of the fact that, Chandrasekhar Venkataraman, this country's only science Nobel laureate who studied, worked, and lived in India after the award, right? And C.V. Raman's work, the bulk of his research in the lead up to his Nobel Prize, was carried out in a public space for science, which is the Indian Association for Cultivation of Science. So for 10 years that he was doing research in Calcutta, from 1907 to 1917, when he was finally appointed to a professorship at the University of Calcutta, he was an accountant during the day and a scientist in the evening. So he not only had a lab that he could use, despite not being, registered in a university or an industrial lab, he was able to passionately pursue something that drove him. Now, that opportunity is not available to any young adult today. This was, immediately after Raman had completed his master's degree at the University of Madras. So, if you are an accountant or a historian like me, a historian of science like me, and if you are just curious about something, there is no way that you will have access to, unless you, of course, set up your own large laboratory, there is no way to have access to do something together with people, right? So it's not just about doing it alone, but also having a community with which you can exchange and have a dialogue and build your practice, so to speak. So that public laboratory complex is unique to us, and it's also something I'm very proud of. And we also have, finally, the mentorship initiative, where, as I already mentioned, we train, nurture, and mentor young adults to learn, so I think just a couple of days ago, Jack Ma, before he was called in by the government in China, said something very, very interesting. He said, looking at the horizon of artificial intelligence and what it is going to do to the workplace, and one needn't worry about whether it's coming in 20 years or 50 years, but looking at what's, sorry, not 20 or 50, 10 years or 20 years, but looking at what's happening to the workplace, the kind of skills that are going to be needed by young adults are going to be that of independent thinking, of judgment, of making decisions, working in a team. Those are the kind of skills they're going to need, and not necessarily sort of the kind of rote learning or other kinds of skills that we are training them primarily in today, right? And so this is what we want to do with the young adults, to help them discern, to help them learn, to get a sense of judgment, initiate projects, work with experts. That's the kind of thing we want to work with. Now, having said a little bit about the larger project, we started a public engagement program. So if you look at this, the public engagement, public lab mentorship. So we've started working on 1 and 3. Public lab, of course, will open only with our building. So these are 3 exhibitions that we've had since October last year. And we, the idea of the Anthropocene, or the idea of irrespective of the sort of disagreements or what or around the term, or not just disagreements, but where the nature of the consensus around the term, what is true is that human intervention is doing something to the climate, is doing something not so good to the planet, and that is something we need to address. And that is something that has been at the back of our mind as we did our exhibitions. So the first one was about marking the 150 years of Mendeleev's periodic table. The second was entirely about water, and the third was entirely about plants. There's another initiative that we've started during the pandemic in partnership with the Bangalore Sustainability Forum and Champaka Bookstore, where we are, it's called Reading for Change, after Playing for Change, those of you who know of Playing for Change. So what we're doing is monthly book readings online and discussions with the author and a counterpart around UN Sustainable Development Goals, right? Like, so we had David Quammen, we had talking about spillover, we had Angela Saini talking about superior, Sorry, no, she didn't talk about the race book. She talked about Inferior, which is the gender book. Yeah. So we are working during the pandemic. We've organized Reading for Change, a book club, you can call it. We also participated in something called the Shape of a Practice, which is in collaboration with the Haus der Kulturen der Welt, a Berlin-based cultural institution, where it's a global collaboration to think across disciplines about the Anthropocene. And we are now working in partnership with them, but I think primarily in partnership with Indian institutions to organize in an Anthropocene campus in the middle of 2022, where we will bring institutions across India and friends and collaborators from abroad to participate in thinking about what does a discussion across disciplines on the Anthropocene mean in the Indian context. We'll of course have an exhibition to go along with it, because that's one of our primary ways of organizing public engagement. Another thing that we started with during the pandemic is a partnership in a global museums group called The People and the Planet. And the sort of the pivot of this collaboration is the Natural History Museum in London. So we are working very closely with them on organizing discussions on how our cultural institutions, especially museum and museum-like institutions, so we are more museum-like than museum, but a part of the same fraternity. So how do we deal with messages around people and the planet? So that's also something we've started work on this summer. I think coming back to what I started with, a cultural conversation around science. It is yet another way of saying taking research to the public, right? Making research sensible to the public. And how do you do that? I mean, you as an institution like ours, where we will have experimental laboratories, but we are not a university, and no single university in any case has the command of various research areas. So we work very strongly with research institutions. So for our for our exhibitions, we work with the Royal Society of Chemistry, with the Smithsonian Institution, the John Innes Center which is a Center for Excellence for Plant Health, the Natural History Museum, which I already mentioned. And for our up-and-coming exhibition on contagion, we're working closely with the Robert Koch Institute, recently in news because Boris Johnson dismantled the Public Health England corpus in order to establish something that looked more like the Berlin-based Robert Koch Institute. But we are very, very happy to be able to partner with an eminent institution to also bring the message around contagion, pandemic, and the Anthropocene in our next exhibition.
That's really
building
interesting.
Sorry, yes, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Janvi. Unfortunately, we're a bit tight for time, so we won't do the questions right at the moment.
Sure.
We might, if we still have time at the end, put out a few questions. Sure. But with that, thank you so much, Janvi. It was really interesting to understand how you're moving from the professional plane and taking it to the cultural world, and I think that's where our role should be now moving forward, because it's always important to take science to the masses and trying to get it more universally available. So now we move on to the last part of our evening, which is there is one more method of outreach that strikes a chord with the hearts and minds of people, and that is the performing arts. Reaching masses through music has played a major role in rousing society and bringing together people for change. Today we have with us Grammy Award winner Mr. Ricky Cage, the composer of the famous Shanti Samsara, which was launched by our Honorable PM Mr. Narendra Modi and the French President Francois Hollande at the United Nations COP21 in Paris. Mr. Jairam Ramesh rightly said that the world needs more artists like Ricky Cage to take up the cause of environment in such an effective manner. Before we invite Mr. Cage, we would request everyone to use the Q&A facility that is there on Zoom to enter your questions for the Q&A session later tonight. And with this now, I welcome Mr. Ricky Cage.
Hello everyone, Namaste. It's a huge honor for me to be a part of this amazing T.N. Khoshoo Memorial Award and Lecture. So today, just to clarify, I'm doing the lecture part of it, and I hope I do a good job of it given the spectacular personalities who have delivered this lecture before me. I wish I could have been there and delivered this lecture in person. Being a musician, I thrive on feeding off the energy of my audiences. But today, instead of looking into the faces of my audience, I'm actually looking straight into the lens of a camera. Nevertheless, such are the times. And as I said before, I'm just honored, really, really honored to be here. Now, as I was introduced, I'm Ricky Cage. I'm a musician. I'm an environmentalist, two pillars that have pretty much dictated my whole life and all of my life decisions. And for the last few years, the only music that I have made is about the environment, sustainability, and positive social impact around those areas. Now, ever since I remember, I've always been a musician. My ears have always been more important than my eyes. While most of my classmates in school, while I was a very small child, were very fascinated by television and by video games and by cartoons, I was obsessed with my music system. I would pull apart songs, trying to figure out who the instrumentalists are, who played those instruments. I would try to understand different cultures because my father had this huge world music collection. So I would try to understand different cultures and people through music. And a lot of my general knowledge came through music. And of course, it was through music that I fell in love with our natural world. I found a deep connection between music and nature. I also realized that I loved hanging around with animals more than I loved, with humans. While my parents constantly ordered me to run away from these seemingly dangerous and creepy crawly animals, I was very drawn towards them. I would look into the eyes of these animals. I would see personality in every single animal, including the insects and reptiles. And at that young age, I have to confess, I was definitely called a very weird child. I would often wonder why everyone's first reaction would be just to kill these animals, just to step on them and kill them. And if they were supposed to be killed, then why do they exist? Of course, now I completely understand that every species is absolutely responsible for maintaining the delicate balance of nature that keeps us alive, and every single animal, no matter how seemingly dangerous or insignificant, is a really important part of our planet. Anyway, many years later, I became a professional musician. My dream came true. Now, how I managed to do that in a family of doctors and with Indian parents is a story within itself. But nevertheless, I started off my musical career making music for TV and for radio commercials for multinational brands. In a very short span, I saw quite tremendous success, and I'm really grateful for that. I was making music for everyone from Google to Microsoft, from Toyota to Suzuki, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Pizza Hut, HDFC, Airtel, Vodafone, basically every single brand and their competitor everywhere in the world. And in 13 years, my music was placed in more than 3,500 commercials. Now, after doing all of that, it very suddenly dawned on me that these big brands are spending thousands of dollars on me to create a piece of music for them, to sell a product, because, they're always trying to sell something, so they're doing that through music. And then millions to actually air that music on television and radio. So they have understood the power of music. Now, they have understood that music is a very powerful language, not just for communicating a message, which in their case is a message of sales, but also for retaining that message deep into the consciousness of a listener. Now, the songs that we learned during our childhood are the songs that we remember forever. And the morals that we learn through those songs stick with us throughout our lives. And if there were jingles and it was a product that they were advertising, those products stick with our minds forever. And these big brands understood this and were ready to base their massive multi-million-dollar campaigns on music to drive a message of sales. That is when I decided that I needed to use my gift of music to make this world a better place in my own small way and within my own small capacity. By communicating a positive message through music, and I decided that all my music needed to be an extension of my personality and beliefs, and every piece of music needed to be a reflection of what I strongly believed in. And I strongly believe in conservation and in sustainability, so that's what my music is mainly about. Now, in doing this, I met a South African flute player, Wouter Kellerman, and I was a huge fan of his music. He was, of course, a fan of my music. I'm very grateful for that. And we wanted to work with each other, and we met in Los Angeles. Now, while discussing ideas for a potential collaboration, I mentioned to him that I just finished composing a piece of music based on the ideals of peace by Mahatma Gandhi, my father of the nation. And it was a huge coincidence that Wouter was just working on a piece of music inspired by his father of the nation, that is Nelson Mandela. Now, through our discussions, we obviously realized that there's a whole lot of cross-pollination over here because, as we know, Mahatma Gandhi spent his formative years in South Africa, so he had a lot of South Africanness in him. Nelson Mandela, on the other hand, was heavily inspired by the non-violence movement by Mahatma Gandhi, so he had a lot of Indianness in him. So I sent Wouter my Indian music to add some South Africanness to it, and he sent me South African music and he told me add some Indianness to it. So that's what we did. We spent 2.5 years, we became the best of friends, we traveled around the world. And then we had an album ready at the end of 2.5 years, that is Winds of Samsara. And that album was hugely successful. We went on to the top of the USA Billboard charts. We stayed there for a very long time. We were #1 on the world radio charts. And eventually we won the holy grail of music awards, that is the Grammy Award. Now, I then went ahead and I made my magnum opus, my dream album, an album called Shanti Samsara, my epic album for environmental consciousness. This time, the album featured over 500 musicians from over 40 countries, including, of course, India, USA, Australia, Turkey, Algeria, Azerbaijan, Senegal, Sweden, Korea, China, Vietnam, Tibet. You know, all of them coming together to celebrate the natural world and raise awareness on climate change. So basically, wherever I could find a musician in any corner of the globe who felt as strongly as I did about the environment, I just reached out to them. The album was launched at the United Nations Climate Change Conference, the COP21 in Paris by our Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji and the then French President François Hollande. And I went on to performing this album worldwide, including twice now at the United Nations headquarters in New York and in Geneva, and of course in more than 35 countries all over the world. So here I'm going to play a song for you because I'm a musician, so I'm going to play you some music. So it's called Shine Your Light. It's a song about kindness, it's about empathy. It's just about shining our light to everyone around us. Now this video shows clips of our performances of this song in 7 countries and in 13 cities, so you'll get an idea of what our performances look like. Also, we are going to be showcasing through the song the performance at the United Nations headquarters in Geneva. Here is Shine Your Light.
Namaste, everyone! Whoa, whoa. Whoa, whoa. Shine your light.
Somewhere along our journey of being humans, we have forgotten that we are not the only species on this planet. We are just one among millions and millions of species on this planet.
Whoa, 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 whoa. We are all in this together. We are all in this together. And nothing can remind us like a simple act of kindness. Hey! And in the blackest of nights, just one flash of light shows we're not alone. No, not today. It is time. Let's do this. It's our time. Let's do this. It is time to shine your light. Let's do this. It is time to shine your light.
We only protect things that we love. So we should all make it our mission to make everyone fall in love with the natural world. And hopefully through that love, we will clean, protect and conserve.
It is time to shine your light. मैं जो साथ निभाऊं, तू जो साथ निभाए, तो बात बन जाए, तो ये रात ढल जाए. चलो हाथ बढ़ाएं, चलो सबको दिखाएं, कोई भी यहाँ अकेला ना है. It is time, let's do this, it's our time. Let's do this, it is time to shine your light. Let's do this, it is time to shine your light. Come on! Whoa,
suffering that we inflict on the environment and nature is pain and suffering that will eventually be inflicted on us as a species, and we need to start thinking as a species.
It is time. Let's do this. It's our time. Let's do this. It is time to shine a light. It is time. Let's do this. It's our time. Let's do this. It is time to shine a light.
We do not inherit this world from our ancestors, but we borrow it from our children.
Shine your light.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you so much. Hope you like that song and hope I'm making sense with my talk. Now, coming back to the Paris Climate Change Conference, the COP21, while watching the conference, one world leader who absolutely caught my attention was President Anote Tong, the president of the Pacific Island nation of Kiribati. Now, he went up on stage and gave a very short presentation, and that's why he caught my attention. He appealed to all the 195 countries present to make an agreement to pass a resolution that will ensure that his people of Kiribati stay above the water. Now, that was a very powerful statement and it quite shook me. Now, I'm ashamed to say that I had not even heard of this country, Kiribati, and no one I knew had even heard of this country, let alone her disastrous fate. So I studied about Kiribati. So Kiribati is an island nation in the South Pacific, 21 inhabited islands, very low-lying atoll islands, and the entire country will be uninhabitable in the next 30 years, and in the next 80 years, the tallest point in any of the islands will be completely submerged underwater, and they are going to be the first country in the world to completely disappear and completely submerge due to climate change. So, in effect, we're going to have to redo our globes and our maps we make, and the part where Kiribati is in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, we're just going to have to paint that blue. So I visited Kiribati. I spent 2 weeks, I think between 2 to 3 weeks over there engaging with their wonderful citizens. I fell in love with their culture and the beauty of this island. Now, this is a country that lives within nature. They do not take more than they can give back. No industrialization, no major development, and yet they are the ones going underwater for no fault of their own, and climate change is not at all of their making just because they are low-lying islands. Now, at the end of the day, it's just one Earth and one atmosphere. If all of our countries could build domes around ourselves and keep our carbon emissions within our own borders, then countries like Kiribati have nothing to worry about. But then our carbon emission spreads around the world and it becomes their carbon emissions. And as you know, polar ice caps melt, ocean levels rise, and since they are the lowest lying islands, they are suffering the consequences of our actions. Now, again, being a musician, I made a song there. And with their people and with their president. And those of you who have ever been to a concert of mine or even a talk of mine, you've already heard all about this island and, and about her fate because of how passionate I am about telling their story and about performing this song at every single concert of mine all over the world. So for those of you who've already listened to the song, here it is again. Here is my song, Samsara.
The science is very clear about climate change. Within the century, our entire nation will be underwater. As in some countries, you have a cyclone, a hurricane. Over time, the land remains there, the water recedes. In our case, it does not. It's a disaster that doesn't go away. Our reality is that we have communities who already have to relocate, left their villages. We have communities which are on the verge of doing the same thing. For us, climate change is not something that's likely to happen in the future. It is happening, we are facing it.
grown from the earth, children of the sun. Though we may have forgotten, her song is still sung. No need to steal what she freely gives, and no need to fear when she only knows love.
I feel the pain, mother forsaken by her children forgotten. How long till we see
She is none but us, and we are none but her, and we will always be one heart, one heart.
I've always referred our situation as those countries on the front line, because when we fall, there'll be another front line, and that front line will keep moving back until those countries and those people who believe they will not be affected will eventually be affected, and that is the reality we are facing. I think as human beings, we are being challenged. Should we do something about it? And I believe, yes, everybody has the responsibility to do it.
Now, all those Kiribati children that you saw in the video, if you only think about it, they will not have the opportunity to grow up in their own country. Their country will be gone, and very soon they're going to be refugees of a new kind, and that is climate refugees. Now, Kiribati, we may or may not be able to do anything about their fate and their future, but they can be used as such a powerful example to showcase to us that climate change is real, climate change is human-induced, climate change has currently got victims, and our actions sitting down over here are having disastrous consequences on people on the other side of the world. It brings in a different perspective when we actually see their faces. Now, when we speak about creating a more environmentally conscious society, we have to start with the children, and there is no two ways about that. I've always believed that children are born with compassion, they're born with empathy, they're born with kindness and environmental consciousness and an inherent love for nature. But we are just systematically erasing that through the way that we've built our world, the way that we've created all our mechanisms, and through the education system itself. So along with two wonderful friends of mine, Lonnie Park from New York and Dominic de Cruz from Bangalore itself, and along with guidance and participation from UNICEF, I created My Earth Songs, which are basically a set of songs inspired by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So we took these complex ideas and thoughts and simplified them for children. The songs are extremely simple, they're very catchy, and as I said, they're very simple, which was really difficult for me to do as a musician. The toughest part about being a musician and the toughest part about doing this project was trying to keep things as simple as possible. So the songs are pretty much at the level of nursery rhymes or adolescent rhymes. We have placed all these songs into the public domain, so anyone can use these songs for whatever purposes they like, completely free of cost, without caring about licensing or permissions and things like that. So they're, as I said, they're super catchy, they stick in your head in one listening, and we have placed them in the education system. So they are currently in over 4.9 million textbooks worldwide in multiple languages, and we are hoping to scale up to 11 million textbooks worldwide by 2022. So if any of you can help me out, please help me out. As I said, it's completely free of cost. There's no copyright issues, nothing. So the musical album of this particular set of songs is released by Universal Music in the UK, who have been our amazing partners in trying to spread awareness on these songs far and wide. We also did an online concert of these songs on World Music Day, that is June 21st this year, along with the French company Vivendi. This online concert was watched by over 25 million people through TV broadcasts in more than 75 countries. And of course, social media and streaming services also broadcasted it to large numbers. So here are some very short snippets to give you an idea of what these songs are about. The first clip is about gender equality, sung by my friend Grammy Award winner Lucy Kalantari. The second song is in Hindi, teaching kids about what a carbon footprint is. It's sung by Anjana Padmanabhan, who is the first ever winner of Indian Idol Junior. And it's in Hindi, as I said. And the third song is again in English, and it's about the importance of trees. It's called Gimme Your CO2, and it's sung by Grammy nominee Lonnie Park from New York. So here are the short snippets.
He's a chef and bakes delicious cakes. His dinners are quite a vision. He loved to cook when he was a boy. He loved being in the kitchen. And I know a lady who flies a plane over the seas and sands. When she was a girl, she loved to work with tools of steel in her hands. She can do, he can do the things they do so well. She can do, he can do, so teach them to excel, excel, excel. इंसानों के कुछ है निशान जो मुश्किल से जाते मिट, और जो अपने हैं ये निशान इन्हें कहते हैं कार्बन फुटप्रिंट, है कार्बन फुटप्रिंट. पर हम मिटाएंगे ये कार्बन फुटप्रिंट, मिलके मिटाएंगे ये कार्बन फुटप्रिंट. कितना कुछ हम फेंकते हैं और कितना करते हैं धुआं, करते पानी वेस्ट तो अपना ही नुकसान हुआ ना, नुकसान हुआ ना.
Isn't falling, I need a drink. I'm thirsty and very sad. If you cut me down, we both won't breathe, and that would be real, real bad. So give me your CO2. I'll breathe it in and give it back to you as oxygen. I'll help you out, 'cause that's what giving is all about.
If any of you would like to listen to or use these songs for whatever purposes you'd like, hopefully educational purposes, go to myearthsongs.com to download everything for free. Now, in today's world of climate change, of species extinction, deforestation, pollution, environmental degradation, of course, so many society issues like poverty, hunger, inequality, gender violence, racism, it is said that the biggest threat to our environment, the biggest threat to our existence as the human species, is the constant thought that we have that somebody else will make a difference. We're always waiting for other people to make a difference. We're waiting for governments to make a difference, NGOs, corporations, leaders, universities to make a difference. When the truth is that to fix all of our problems, we just need to look within ourselves. Now, we are the agents of change. Everyone speaks about changing the world, but nobody talks about changing themselves. And that's not because all of us are evil people. It's simply because we have just not empowered ourselves to believe that we can truly make a difference if we only make small incremental changes within our own lives, like reducing our consumption of plastics, our dependence on fossil fuels, use public transportation, consume less of everything basically, and be kind to one another, show empathy. I believe that is all that is needed, because the need of the hour is behavioral change and becoming a more environmentally conscious society. Now, as Mahatma Gandhi said, that we need to be the change that we want to see. Now, as I said, and I repeat, that I believe that music is a very powerful language, not just to communicate a message, but for retaining that message deep in the consciousness of a listener. And as I said, the songs that we learned during our childhood are songs that we never forget. The morals that we learn through the songs are morals that dictate our life decisions and dictate our lives forever. And that's the reason why I did the My Earth Songs project. Now, we can make 1,000 speeches and showcase a ton of scientific data to people. But what is needed is for artists to interpret that data and speeches through the emotional language of music and touch the hearts and souls of people. And I believe music can be that amazing catalyst to drive people from just mere awareness of problems, because everybody is aware of all the problems, maybe not the exact statistics or the exact extent, but everybody is aware of all the problems, to actually taking concrete action to actually solving these problems. So music can be that catalyst to move people from awareness to action. And that's what we musicians need to do. We need to work towards creating art to make everyone believe that they themselves can bring about change by just incremental changes within their own lives. Now, in this year's Gandhi Jayanti, along with, that is October 2nd, along with my good friends and superstars Salim Suleiman, I created a song called Man Mein Aman. Now, this song is about the Kasturi deer, or the musk deer, as we all know. This musk deer, this Kasturi deer, is really confused because he can smell this amazing fragrance following him wherever he goes. This amazing fragrance is just everywhere he goes. And he's searching and searching for the source of this fragrance. But the Kasturi deer does not realize that he himself is the source of this fragrance. So that's what this song is about. This song goes like, Badalav jo chahe tu, wo khud hi tu banna. Man mein aman tu rakhna. And I repeat, as Mahatma Gandhi said, we need to be the change that we want to see in this world. Here is the song, Man Mein Aman.
चाहत है सुकून की तो मन में अमन तो रखना, राहत है दूर भी तो मन में अमन तो रखना। कस्तूरी जो महके मृग बहके पर वो ना जाने, दुनिया में जो ढूंढे है उसके अंदर ही ठिकाने। बदलाव जो चाहे तू वो खुद ही तू बनना, मन में अमन तू रखना।
So that was a small part of the song. And if you want to see the whole song, you can go onto YouTube and look for Man Mein Aman and my name. So I'd like to conclude this talk by quoting Baba Diop, the great Senegalese conservationist. Now, he said that at the end of the day, we as humans, we only protect things that we love. That's how we are, you know. We only protect things that we love and things around us. We only love things that we understand, and we only understand things that we are taught. So I want to make it my mission to make everyone fall in love with our natural world, and hopefully through that love, we will find it within ourselves to protect, to conserve, and to sustain. Now, India is a country, and I absolutely love our country. And India is much more than just humans. And we need to constantly remind ourselves that we are just one among millions and millions of species in this country or on this planet. So I created an instrumental version of our national anthem. And for the video, we decided to showcase the true inhabitants of India. Now, who are the true inhabitants of India? Who are the true citizens of India? The forests and the wildlife, because the forests and wildlife have existed on our land long before any humans have ever set foot here. And I'm sure you all agree with me. Now, the forests and wildlife define the beauty of our country, they define our sustainability, and are responsible for our very survival. So let us all use our patriotism, our spirituality, our love for the country to conserve our forests and wildlife. And if you would please indulge me, let us all rise for the Indian national anthem. Let us all rise for the true citizens of India. It's a huge honor for me to be a part of this amazing T.N. Khoshoo Memorial Award and Lecture. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much. If I can, Mr. Cage, in millennial terms, that was lit. That was really amazing and awesome. And for the older generation, that was really cool. Music, seriously, like that was amazing, and it can truly bring people together for a cause or purpose, and it really tugs at heartstrings. We would now like to do a short Q&A session with you. There are a few questions that have come in. We'll definitely put that forward, and I also like to remind the audience you still can put in your questions in the Q&A facility as we go on. Given time, we'll definitely put that forward as well. So first question, Mr. Cage, what's easier, researchers picking up performing arts or performing artists learning science?
No, I'm sorry. I just coughed in between, so I missed your question. Could you tell me again?
No problem. What's easier in your opinion, researchers picking up performing arts or performing artists learning science?
No, I think both of them are not ideal. I think what should happen is researchers collaborating with artists. I think that's what's more important. So I think every researcher who wants to put their message out into the world should collaborate with an artist. And every artist who wants to put out a correct message out in the world needs to collaborate with researchers. And that's what I've been doing for pretty much all my life, like in the sense that I love collaborating with scientists. I love hanging around with scientists, and and they are my favorite group of people.
H is very happy to know that. All our scientists are nodding their heads like, oh, okay, that's a win. So actually, very interesting. One of our board members was looking through your music, right? And was very intrigued by your song titled The Last Mistake. And we would be very interested to understand the story behind this song and why the name.
Actually, that was a song that I did a very, very long time. That was a song that I did, I think, almost 15 years ago. So it was an instrumental track. It wasn't what do you call that? It did not have any lyrics and things like that. It was just something that I felt that of course, I was not very mature at that time, but nevertheless, the thought process at that particular point in time was a piece of me at that particular point in time. So it was that that all of us are making a lot of mistakes, and and we are quickly approaching the very last mistake that we can possibly make. So that was the idea, and that was the thought process behind making that instrumental piece.
Right. That's actually very interesting. So third question, climate change and pandemics are kind of considered, well, for want of a better word, nerdy, but global issues that are not easy to understand in our personal space. That's what we mean. So how can performing arts help create that kind of an understanding of a global issue?
So I believe that, everybody talks about, and what I mentioned in my talk also, that, the golden question is not about awareness, because everybody is aware of problems. The question is basically about how do we move people from mere awareness of problem to action. And that is where, the arts comes into play, because you can put forth a whole lot of speeches, you can put forth a whole lot of scientific data to people, but the truth is that, that artists need to interpret this data in the emotional language of their arts to actually hit the souls and hearts of people, because that's the only way you can actually motivate people into action. So when it comes to, since you mentioned the pandemic and since you mentioned climate change, the thing is that climate change, as all of us know, is the biggest existential crisis that that the human race has ever faced. But I believe that it's a communication problem. That's what it is, and that's the reason why the global action is not as strong as it should be, for such a huge problem. And if you look at it, at least when I used to give my talks and when I used to do my concerts and speak to people, they used to always tell me that that business is always going to be as usual. Nobody's going to change. Nobody's going to bring about behavioral change. Nobody's going to change their own behavior. Everybody's going to want to drive in the cars. Everybody's going to want to fly in planes and things like that. And governments are not going to make strong legislation because it's going to go against the economy. But then this pandemic has clearly shown us that if you can absolutely prove to people that there is clear and imminent danger to themselves or to their loved ones around them, then basically people are absolutely capable of bringing about strong behavioral change and fast behavioral change within their own lives, and and governments are ready to take strong action which could go against the economy and for the safety of his or her constituency. So my whole thought is that in a more what do you call that, humorous way, is that this climate change needs to hire the publicist of COVID, and and learn how to communicate and basically carry forward these lessons, because COVID was very successful at bringing about behavioral change.
Incredibly, like it just happened overnight, right? Absolutely, I agree. Well, we have a funny question. One of our faculty said, "Will Mr. Case be willing to be an adjunct fellow at A3?"
I'm already an adjunct fellow at NIAS, that is the National Institute of Advanced Studies. And I absolutely love them. But if you give me the offer, I would jump on it. It would make my father very proud, because he, as it is very upset that I'm a musician. So, so basically, if I tell him I'm a professor, it's going to make him really happy.
I'm sure the faculty has heard this when definitely also made a note. Do we have time for maybe one more question? TNK Tech Team?
One more, Mrinalini.
Okay, sure. Well, then let's do a heavy question. So researchers often wonder how the performing arts were a necessary element of creating movements in support of noteworthy causes or societal issues, like, for example, the role of rock and roll in the opposition of, say, the Vietnam War, but mostly at the national level. For global causes, again, a good example, pandemic or climate change, how can the performing arts really help, really reach out? What is it that they can do?
I mean, nowadays, what is national and what is global, like in the sense that there is pretty much no difference in it. Like even the example that I gave of Kiribati, where it's a country which is going to be the first country to go underwater, and and climate change is not at all of their making. At the end of the day, all these problems, like you mentioned, the pandemic or climate change, is basically borderless, and it's similar with the performing arts. Now, performing artists are sort of stumbling upon becoming more and more global. Simply because the whole globalization of arts and democratization of arts all over the world is just a concept which is about 10 years old, through social media and through YouTube and all of that stuff. So we see spurts of that happening, where artists have been able to get their messages across the world through performing arts and through fine arts and through drama and theater and all of that stuff. But we'll see that happening more and more as we move along. And also, I wanted to just add on one thing, since I was very intently following all the sessions. And I'm a huge fan of everybody who spoke today, especially of Satyajit Bhatkal from Pani Foundation. I'm a huge fan of Pani Foundation. What he said is that, I just wanted to contradict one thing that he said, that even though I absolutely agreed and I was mesmerized by everything that he said that communication is a science, which I absolutely disagree with, because communication can never be a science, simply because communication is an art. And because science is one size fits all. And, and science is one idiom or one particular thought, which is the truth, no matter what and no matter in whichever region, So that is basically what science is all about. Whereas communication, you have to make it an art form where it's a different style of communicating to different demographics. It's a different style of communicating to whether it's children or whether it's adults. And plus, it's not a way that you can say that, okay, this is the way to communicate and this will work. You have to constantly communicate and figure out what the results are, and then pivot and then figure out different ways to communicate till you find a way to reach out to a person, because there can be multiple ways of communicating to a person and nothing works. And you have to keep finding that way to communicate. Like if I'm communicating through music, if I'm using, let's say, heavy metal music, that might be music to somebody's ear, but it might be noise to somebody else's ear. And if I'm using, let's say, African folk music, it might be music to some people's ear, but it might be noise to somebody else's ear, So that is why communication can never be a science and should never be treated as a science. It should always be treated as an art form where you're constantly trying to figure out what is the best way to communicate. And even if you're successful at communicating, you have to figure out better ways to communicate to make yourself even more successful.
Right. Absolutely. I do agree with you. I think, I think it's a balance, obviously, of science and art, but I also feel it's organic given our times, specifically as we are growing. There are new forms of outreach and communication. I mean, social media wasn't even around a few years back, right?
Correct.
And now we're all just, that's the only way we're now keeping in touch with people, thanks to
No, but
being stuck at home.
I completely agree with that. But also, if you look at communication itself, like if you look at an example of Mahatma Gandhi did not have social media. Mahatma Gandhi did not have mass media, nothing like that. But he managed to create a movement around the country, So basically, that is the idea, where social media is just a tool to reach out to people.
Yeah.
But the communication itself needs to be extremely strong. That is what is important.
Yeah. That's very true. That is amazing to hear from you. And thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule. I'm sure everyone really enjoyed it. I personally did. And I know the team really enjoyed it because our WhatsApp is just like lighting up. Oh, wow, wow, it's spectacular. And everyone's just really, it was beautiful. And thank you so much for this worldview. And we look forward to more interactions with you and A3. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. With this, we would like to now move on to the last part of our evening. I would like to invite Mr. Rajiv Khoshoo, our board member, to present the vote of thanks. Mr. Khoshoo is a member of the A3 Advisory Board, and he's also the Senior Vice President of Transformation Management of Siemens Digital Industries Software. In his current role, he is responsible for integration and management of industry game-changing technologies and relationships. Raj holds a bachelor's in science in mechanical engineering and a master's in science in computer science. On the academic front, Mr. Khoshoo spent over a decade being associated with A.T. Kearney program on Enterprise of the Future at Tepper and Hines School at Carnegie Mellon and Booth Business School at University of Chicago. Please welcome Mr. Raj Khoshoo.
Thank you, Mrinalini. Greetings from Southern California. It's early morning here. It's still dark outside. Literally a new day is dawning with the appointment of John Kerry as the climate envoy in the Biden-Harris administration. So we are really looking forward to that. Just a few closing comments. Success in biodiversity and sustainable development lies not only in research and policy, shaped through communication, which I agree is an art form, and more importantly, through outreach and action. Today, we heard phenomenal examples of outreach and impact. And if you look at the various speakers, and they were inspirational. With that, on behalf of A3 and the Khoshoo family, we congratulate the very inspiring Lisi Priya for a well-deserved Khoshoo Memorial Award. Thanks to Satyajit Bhatkal on Pani Foundation, focus on collective action, as he called it, for the ever-critical resource water. And my learning from that was brand versus cause. I think his focus on the cause was spot on. It really made me think too very simply of what he said. Also, thanks to Janavi Falke for Science Gallery, who brings international experience to the very creative outreach with science and cultural experience. Ricky Cage, my goodness, impossible to put in words the experience of listening to his composition. I'm the guy who asked that question, what did the last mistake mean? At least I got that clarified, very rational and a very good explanation. Finally, congratulations to A3 colleagues who received the doctoral degrees. Lastly, I would like to thank Dr. Kamal Bawa, who I have known since my grade school, and thanks to Nitin Pandit, who has brought a new level of creativity to this event. We obviously share CMU in our backgrounds together. With that, from Southern California, I'd say thank you and good night. As they say in the US, have absolutely a great day. So over to Mrinalini.
Thank you, Mr. Khoshoo. That was very lovely of you. And thank you. We really appreciate you coming in so early. You're way behind in time, so thank you so much. I would just like to mention, we just got word that Mr. Bhatkal would have loved to respond to Mr. Cage. So we hope that as A3 we can facilitate more discussions like this and definitely take it forward. Unfortunately, we're a bit pressed for time, so we won't be able to do it right here. But having said that, thank you to everyone for taking time out and attending this event. A3 researchers are always eager to hear from people from different fields to further the cause of science. We hope to see you in person, fingers crossed, next year at the 2021 T.N. Khoshoo Memorial and Lecture, where we celebrate A3's 25 years. Have a good night and stay safe. Thank you.